Hello everyone, Luke here, and as you can see, I've got the Senku shirt on this week because with this chapter, not going to be around the bush. Seems that Senku is quite literally looking to get petrified for all time based on the end of this chapter. Now, I have my own ideas of where that's going to go, but for now, we'll just dive quickly into the chapter. Okay, so this will be chapter 209, titled "The Rocket's Hard Truth." Ooh, quite a ominous tone there with that chapter title. But anyway, it picks up with the Perseus crossing the Indian Ocean. So I guess they were on the Indian Ocean in the last chapter when they were doing the mathematical Olympics. As we get the exposition of them going, Sino and his crew will be making the engine for the rocket, which makes sense, and Yusuri and her team will be crafting the computer. I love how it's just like, yeah, Yusuri, you're more valuable of a team leader than Taiju in this case, so you're the one who's crafting the computer, your team. But anyway, they go on to say they can now plan for the moon mission by building the rocket ship itself, as we see an image of Chrome, Senku, Kohaku and Suika just on a fantasy rocket just blasting off to the moon. Now, I'm a little bit disappointed about this. A little bit annoyed by this because I've figured that we would be at chapter 250 before we started thinking about building the rocket itself. But I guess we've still got to get to level 99 on some of these adventures, like level 99 on the rocket and level 99 on the computer. So it's going to take a little bit of time, but at the same time, kind of a little bit of annoyed that now it's the time to actually start planning to get the building of the rocket to actually go to the moon. But that's just my little gripe of it. But anyway, they say Kurako asks what the actual rocket is going to be made out of, and she guesses iron. But Senku corrects her and says that iron is too heavy to launch in space. The main ingredient is aluminium, since it's light, which means that now that India's behind them, and yeah, this is kind of like a little bit of annoyance for me as well. It's like, really, we didn't get the math city established. Now, I still think we're gonna get a United Nations of maths established at some point, but at the same time, it's kind of like a bit like they didn't do the whole math city established and didn't really set up math city itself as well. They were just like, oh, we've got we've got the materials for the computer, we've sent it to Corn City, now we're on our way to our next destination, which is Australia. So while I'm a little bit annoyed by that, I really thought we were going to spend a little bit more time in India. I guess it does make sense because they are at a time limit, but at the same time I'm kind of a bit I don't know how to feel about this. But anyway, they're finally going to Australia. I'm finally somewhere that I have a connection to. I'm not Australian in any way, but I do have a personal connection to it in the fact that I've got family in Australia. My aunt's in Australia, my cousins are in Australia. So yeah, finally going to a place that I have some sort of familiarity with. And I've been to Australia myself. Lovely country. If you get a chance to go there, go there. Very beautiful place. But anyway, they say that they're going to the northern tip of Australia, and it's the world's most abundant source for for buxton, the ore that gives them aluminium. So quite interesting that that's the main place of in Australia, and it's not all over Australia that they have to go to in order to get this. But Bayeks for the space rocket. As we've seen them finally reaching Australia, Chrome goes on and says that no one beats him when it comes to rocks, and he thinks there's going to be a battle between him and Chelsea because of her being the geographer and him being the pro explorer. He's going to be like, okay, Chelsea, come on, we're going to have it. We're going to have this battle to find out who can get the mineral first. And Chelsea, being Chelsea, is like, there's no need for this throwdown, Chrome, as Gen comments that this is a rare sight on Chelsea, for this part because, but she goes on to say, nah, this means that there's no searching involved. So basically, she's saying like, yeah, there's no reason to do all this fighting over who's going to find the ore first because there's no need to be doing any searching. As we get the explanation of the fact that the ground that they're all standing on in Australia is made of buxton, the source of aluminium, and Gen, of course, being Gen is like freaking out about this. Like, seriously, with aluminium you can get off the ground, and yeah, chrome, you can get pretty much any mineral off the ground if you look hard enough. I mean, yeah, again, you can pretty much get any mineral off the floor if you look hard enough. Sorry if I said chrome then. I guess Chrome was thinking that as well, and he went, which is why he went bad. And this is where we have Gen going that in no time at all we'll have Aluminium City. Don't be doing this. Do not be doing this series. Do not be doing this series. Even though I know you're on a time limit, don't be doing this. Senku goes on to explain that the red plain rocks that are on the ground and where they dig up is basically the BioXT, which is obviously the ore that makes up aluminium, and Sai comments that it's no wonder that this is the world's best source, and they will transform into the body of the rocket ship. Before we see Kohaku and a mysterious guy, yeah. Me and Party Jams were talking about this in the Discord server, and we were like, "Who is that? Who is that? It can't be anyone we know. Did they just revive someone off screen? I mean, I guess they did, since Suika brings up the revived fluid in this chapter. But anyway, that's something that's probably just or maybe that's just Boichi's art there. It's like it can be anyone, just like insert someone here that he tends to do at certain points in the series. But anyway, Ryusui goes on to say, if I can be honest, he would like a bucket wheel evacuator. No, is it a bucket wheel? A bucket wheel excavator, a bucket wheel excavator. Sorry, I had to get the words out there. But Gen has no idea what he's talking about, as we see this giant contraption, which is basically just like a crane and a wheel together, which like can drill up all the minerals that they want. As he says, an ultra massive open pit mining machine, the most humongous hunk of hardware in human history. And this obviously gets Kazuki excited. Like, he always gets excited when new hard to make machinery gets introduced in the series, and he's just like, oh, I've got to figure out how that works. As Gen says, I wouldn't be surprised if dear Ryusui used one of those to run errands and go shopping. Yeah, he probably did. Knowing Ryusui, he probably did that. And yeah, he confirms in the end that he got to drive the one owned by Nanami Corp. It was quite the spectacle. But of course, Senku reminds him of like, maybe someday, but for now we'll stick to human-powered mining. Now, keep that comment in mind, because this is going to play into a point that I'm going to be making at the end of the chapter. But anyway, they go on to say, we're meant to match the power of that Excalibur machine. How many people must be able to survive that to do that much digging? And Crocker says, ha, and won't that workforce eat through our food supplies? And this is where Suika brings up the whole idea of the revived fluid, and they don't really have much left. Before Fran says, there's no need to worry about the matter. Before we see sorry, the picture wasn't coming through on the phone just then. Before we have Senku going, this is the reason why we found Corn City in the first place, so that we can get the source of food and the source of alcohol, which is used for the revived fluid. As we see another ship approaching Australia at this point, and we see that it's Yo and Ukyo with what looks like a more updated version of the stealth machine that was used in South America. Yeah, it does look like a more advanced version of the stealth ship that they used in South America. That's probably what they were going for. There. So now we've got 3 ships, two main ships we know definite, but this is possible that this is a 3rd ship that that was made up, that was reconfigured from the stealth ship that was used in South America to escape Stanley. As to like, anyone need corn delivery from Corn City, USA, and everyone is just freaking out here. But before they can question anything, Fran makes up some delicious food for them, and they start having a feast. As we get to quite an awkward moment in the chapter where we have Suika saying, "So Ukio's in charge of the ship's radar, but why did you make this trip, Yo?" And this is where we get like the proper first reaction of someone from Corn City being surprised to Suika's new appearance, and Yo is like, "You've grown up so fast. Crap, you're kind of cute." Now, I didn't take this to mean like Yo is being a little bit creepy here, even though he kind of is being a little bit creepy here. But at the same time, I took it to him thinking like, oh my god, she's just grown in the blink of an eye, because to him it is a blink of an eye at some point, and he's like, I don't know how to feel at this point. So that is something I needed to address the elephant in the room here. Do I want to see a Yo so we can relate? Absolutely not. Absolutely not, because that would just be awkward, basically on my point. But I think the reason why, another reason why he might be calling Suika cute is because he's only seen Suika with her helmet on. He's never seen her without it on. So now that he's actually seeing what she actually looks like, because if you remember, Kohaku called Suika the cutest thing ever when she first didn't have her helmet on, and they were like, oh my god, she's so cute, before we got the whole eye thing. But anyway, I feel like that's kind of like what Yo is thinking here. Anyway, moving on, he goes on to say that, well, the thing is, I already made a bunch of dough, and I was sick of wire warping them donuts. So no, he's doing it in three phrases. It's like, well, I was kind of sick of doing the whole donut thing, and I had all this dough to spend. He's obviously referring to money at that point, before he goes on to say, no, that ain't, I'm a bodyguard, and as a former officer of the law. So he's kind of like being like a bit scummy there, being like, well, I have all this dough, and I was getting sick of doing the whole donut thing. No, I'm a former officer of the law, and I'm a bodyguard here. After all, I heard Ukio was taunting another really valuable delivery, and everyone's like, valuable delivery, what's going on here? But of course, Senku knows, and Senku knows what Ukio is doing, because it's very much implied that Ukio does know about immortality, and he's like giving the salute to Senku, being like, "Yep, I've got it here." And it turns out it is the complete Medusa with a new battery. And as they're testing it out, we get a startling revelation from Koku. It's like, oh my, we remember this, that ominous flash of light, as we see the flash of light happen in front of them for the first time without being petrified. So like, this is a rare sight for them to behold, because Senku said 1 meter 3 seconds, and he chucked it to the far off end of the Perseus, and they're like seeing it for the first time, like without them having the worry of being petrified themselves. But Karsuki goes on to say, oh, what do you know? All my hard work on the diamonds came to nothing, but good old Joe managed to make it work. And Uki's like, no, not quite. The device over there is the Medusa from Treasure Island, equipped with one of your batteries, Karsuki. And this is where Karsuki's getting a little bit confused here. And he's like, weren't my batteries all made of duds? Weren't my batteries all a bunch of duds? Before Ukio continues to explain, look at this one. It's one of the old Medusas, one of the many from Ground Zero, but it's got one of Joel's batteries installed. 1 meter 3 seconds. 1 meter 1 second. But as it turns out, that does jack all, basically. And this is where Kosuke is really getting confused about this. Like, wait, so does this mean Joel's batteries were ain't doing squat either? And this is where they come to the realization that the Medusas that they actually found in South America are millennium of years old, and therefore are too busted to even work again. So that clears up any notion of like people using the multiple Medusas in South America to like stage a war between the Kingdom of Science should they get revived. And like the one that Sinu had on him, that was basically a dud to begin with. But Sinu being Sinu, he'll figure out a way to get that crap working again, and then who knows what might happen. continuing on, they say that the batteries weren't a bunch of failures after all, and Ryusui confirms that it was the devices themselves that were too damaged, which was the reason why they weren't working in the first place. And of course, Kohaku being Kohaku is completely lost, so Chrome has to explain to her in very little detail that the Medusa still work. This one Medusa that they still got from Treasure Island still works. So as long as it keeps getting a fresh battery from Kazuki, they can petrify people all day long. And this is where Senku goes. And with a working Medusa in hand, we've got the key component to go up in the rocket on our moon mission suicide run. And this confuses both Chrome and Suika. But Chrome is the one who's getting like, what? Like, actually, you can actually see it on his face. Like, from this panel here, and I'll go through the other panels when we get to them, but you can actually see him getting really pissed off here, starting to get really ticked off here. It's like, no, you're not doing this again. You did this to me back in Ishigami Village with the sulfuric acid Senku. You're not doing this to me again. I feel like that's what's going through Chrome's mind at this point, because they have no idea of knowing when Y-Man might launch another petrification attack against the whole world, so there's no time to do this, which again does make sense, but why they've just been like, okay, we've got to go to India, we've got Mass City's help, okay, we've got to go to Australia, okay, we've got Aluminium City go, okay, we've got Rubber City, because they're on a race against time with Y-Man, because he could attack at any moment, but at the same time, I kind of want them to slow down a little bit, like, just slow down a little bit, and we'll get into why I think they're going to slow down, why I think Math City was skipped over slightly, and why we'll be going back to, why we'll be revisiting Math City at some point in the future when we get to the point that we're going to be making in a bit. Senku carries on and says, there's no time to lose before taking the fight to him on the moon. For this moon mission, we don't have time to craft a return vessel. And you can see like just various reactions from Ryusui, Senku and Chrome here. So if I can get it in. So you can see they're all reactions. Like Chrome is starting to get like, what are you saying here? We can't create a return cross vessel. And we see Ryusui's reaction, who's kind of like a bit somber about this whole idea. Like he's being really serious about this, but at the same time, I feel like he's being somber because this kind of goes against his desire. Because he would probably desire a vessel that can go to the moon and back without worry, and do that multiple times, because that's what he decides. He decides basically the whole universe if he wanted it, and this is kind of going against his character as well, if you really think about it. But anyway, he goes on and he tries to downplay this by just giving a slight smirk, as we see in this panel right here. But as we can see in that panel, he's kind of like being a bit like, I don't know if I agree with this kind of plan, Senku. But if it's you, I'm gonna go with it anyway, because he says no matter how the battle against Y-Man shakes out, whoever joins the moon mission isn't coming back to Earth. Am I wrong? And we see look at Chrome here. That is the face of someone pissed off, and same with Gen. Then Gen doesn't normally make that face, so this will be coming back up in the next chapter. I guarantee you this will be addressed. But anyway, I'll get into that point when we get into the end of the chapter, which will be in a bit. Senku carries on and says, going forward, humanity will keep progress until round trips to the moon are no sweat. But until that day does for us to make this moon landing, the scientist, which is obviously him, because based in this panel, he's kind of got an idea of who it's going to be. So it's the scientist, which is him, the warrior, which is Tsukasa, and the pilot, which is Ryusui, will have to petrify themselves with the Medusa device. And I have lost the panel again because my phone is being not friendly with me today. So let's get back to that panel again. So device, and we see this gorgeous image of just all three of them on the moon. As he says, there on the moon surface will stand long into the future, waiting to be rescued for years, for decades, for centuries. This working Medusa is a one-way ticket on a rocket to the moon, and that's where the chapter ends. So not a lot to go off on this chapter, just in terms of the chapter content, but there's a lot of speculation to go off as well. Like that ominous ending, like they're saying for decades, for centuries. Now, I cannot see for the life of me, unless it's Chainsaw Man, I cannot see for the life of me Dr. Stone doing that where, okay, Senku goes to the moon, gets petrified, and then we cut to 200 years later where you have the descendants of Suika and Chrome and everyone, but I cannot see that. It has to be them people there and then in the end game. I cannot see that. Now, the thing that I wanted to talk about was Chrome's reactions in this chapter are just getting me thinking of like, because they were saying about making round trips to the moon with no sweat. Now I reckon Chrome and possibly again I'm going to bring this up in the next chapter. Like they're going to be putting their foot down and saying like, no Senku, no Ryusui, you are not doing this. You are not going to the moon and having a suicidal nature about dealing with the Y-Man. We're all in this together, and Chrome's even going to bring it up. He's probably going to bring up the fact that Senku, you really want to see something exciting that goes beyond 21st century tech. Am I correct? And Ryusui, you decide the sky. Well, what better way to decide the sky and space by getting a spacecraft that can go to the moon and back with not much difficulty. Now, people are saying Dr. Sinu, when they get petrified on the moon, Dr. Sinu will be the one to envelop the rescue mission. Maybe that might happen, but I reckon what will happen more likely is that Chrome and Gen will say, no, we're not doing it. We're a team. You've got your team here, Senku. So let's build a spacecraft that goes beyond 21st century. Basically, plus ultra this thing, to use My Hero Academia terms, plus ultra this thing, go beyond your limits. So go beyond the limits of what humanity is capable of. Because if you can go beyond the limits of what humanity is capable of, then space travel in the future will be no sweat. And let's go around the world. Let's gather more materials to make this return spacecraft. And Senku will probably be like, "You're right, Chrome. You are absolutely right." So that's my theory. That will probably that's probably why we never got Math City established. Because they're gonna probably be going again, like I was saying, around the world some more, collecting more materials than ever before to create the spacecraft that's gonna be capable of doing return missions. And of course, there's gonna be a lot of testing. There has to be a lot of testing with this spacecraft. If this is the idea that they're going down, and why Marseille was sort of like skipped over for now, in favour of getting to this point of like explaining like, this is where we're going. We are going to be building a spacecraft that's capable of multiple trips to the moon and back. That's my idea of what we're going off in here with Dr. Stone moving forward in the future, and the fact that we're going to be going to not just like to get minerals, but also probably going to England to get more crafting done for computers. Whether this takes 5 years in story term or 10 years, we're going to get there. We're going to get there eventually, and we might even get semiconductors. People are saying like that's just going to be impossible, but we might get that if Senku can revive some more genius scientists or genius programmers like Sai. That may be a possibility. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say on this chapter. Like I said, not much to go off in the context of the chapter, just a lot of pure speculation about where the series is actually going and if they're actually going to move forward in building a spacecraft beyond the 21st century. But anyway, guys, what did you think of this chapter? Let me know. Like, subscribe, comment, all that jazz. And this will be Lasherluke signing off. Later, guys.